Tuesday, April 2025. A month after Monday, March 2025, I have spent my time reminiscing about the past, present, and future with the mistletoe. Promptly, the mistletoe asks me how I've met them. It all started since the early 2000s, I told them. More specifically, within the early to mid 10s, I added. The mistletoe begins to listen, feeling very relaxed, listening to my voice, talking about how I've met them. I've met them before they went by any of the pronouns. So, more specifically, long ago, I've met the red haired girl going by she, her pronouns. I, at the time, was just still Mr. Magistral Malik, or at least a pre existing Mr. Magistral Malik, going by he, him pronouns for the most part to the same extent as the red haired girl went by she, her pronouns. Me and the red haired girl didn't know each other well enough due to the two of us literally being new to a campus we would attend. The only time the red haired girl and I got to know each other was by the two of us asking each other for directions around the campus we would be attending, as well as a couple of occasions of me spotting the red haired girl being made fun of by other students who would usually poke fun at the red haired girl's tall appearance, or having red hair, or having big long ears. So I would stick up for the red haired girl. This connection led to the two of us getting to know each other a little bit more, especially with the two of us having some things in common. I taking interest in swords and her taking interest in bows and arrows. So the two of us would like weaponry, like the medieval combat materials. Personally, I thought it was really cool, and still do, and the red-haired girl thinks so as well. So, quite some stuff in common. There was a time at some point I was going through a very rough, difficult time. I was really stressed out, feeling alone, and I was having a difficult time keeping up with my academics or my campus. So, the red-haired girl notices me feeling very stressed out. I have like a manifesto, and she reads through it, and she asks if I'm doing alright, as if she's trying to look out for me and stuff. And I open up about how stressed up I've been feeling. And eventually, the red-haired girl and I bond. She introduces her name to me. She refers to herself as a very long German name that I cannot be able to fully comprehend, called Natasha Stauscha Humwe, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. A long name, a very convoluting name to even pronounce, but she says that her more simplified English version of the name is Nostalgia Homesick, the pseudonym she goes by more specifically. I told her that I go by Malik Magistral, and I began talking to her about my interest of drawing and animating furries. And she begins talking to me about her interests with archery, shooting arrows out of the bows, leading a group called A1 Archery, and the list goes on. We talk for a while. This connection would lead to us being close. Close friends, sure, but eventually this progressed to the two of us becoming more than just friends. We would become boyfriend and girlfriend. We would spend times just out, hanging around at the park. We spent times just getting to know each other a little bit more and more. And I think I felt more comfortable under my skin since then. She is very nice and caring. I never really been treated this way unconditionally before. I barely have friends, and I mostly have enemies. I'm not a very perfect individual. I have flaws, and I say like over-the-top dumb stuff. And part of it is I don't have a filter. I insist, but some part of it I have some ability to control my thoughts and feelings, clearly. It's just that I bottle up my emotions on a couple of occasions. I have a difficult time adjusting to a couple of situations, more specifically. So I think that I would spend the time talking to Nostalgia Homesick about these issues. And from then on, the connection would grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. Over time, Nostalgia Homesick would be going to advanced classes and periods and graduating slightly more early, specifically due to her being a grade higher than me. She's slightly older than me, being 1 year older than me, and I would spend my time alone by that point at the campus, feeling alone. I don't know any other words to say than just alone because that's honestly how I felt. And even my enemies and some friends of mine would point out how lonely I would feel, and lonely I literally am. I try to cope with it by just reminiscing and imagining nostalgia to some extent, but it wouldn't be enough, and I would just feel alone for the most part. It has gotten to the point where my mental state has deteriorated so badly. It got me in a very seriously dark place, and I don't know if that's something I want to mention right now, but it's probably for another story. Eventually, I reunite with Nostalgia Homesick. Fast forward, I would say roughly within the span of a few months to a few years. At the quickest, maybe like 5 months. For the long run, maybe 5 years. Either way, within the time skip, her and I would coincidentally identify as under the non-binary umbrella, being dimoric, demoric, however you're supposed to pronounce it. And not just non-binary and they/them pronouns, but more specifically over time, we would be gender fluid. I would go by any of the pronouns, and she would go by any of the pronouns. For simplicity, I call myself mostly he, him pronouns, and for simplicity, Nostalgia Homesick calls herself she, her pronouns. But we flexibly use different pronouns from time to time. But even if anyone questions why we're not using all the other pronouns and stuff, I mean, with people being non-binary and people being gender fluid, that's not like really, there's not really a specific way to be non-binary. And I mean, there's not really a specific way to be cisgender neither, because some cisgender people might go by they them pronouns. There's probably someone who does, but I mean, I'm not saying all of them would, but I'm just saying there's some people whose experiences are different than others, and I think we're quite unique in some way. Speaking of unique, I've definitely noticed a unique retcon with Nostalgia Homesick. She says she still goes by Nostalgia Homesick, but she has her new name for her angelic form as the Mistletoe. Mistletoe Viscumalbum. A very long name, but at least one I could slightly pronounce a little bit more, but I still see her as both Natasha Steltia Humwe / Nostalgia Homesick alongside Mistletoe Viscumalbum. Kind of reminds me a little bit about how I would become Malik Magistral all the way to Mr. Magistral Malik, all the way to M cubed to the third power, all the way to Lucifer Reborning Star. And I would kind of be like the devil in contrary to the Mistletoe, who she would be more of an angel. The two of us would be opposite forces of good and evil. You see, she's more of the good side of just wanting to save the day, and I'm more of the not so good side who wants to just cause a little mischief and stuff. She would really keep an eye on me, so yeah, I can't really like be too mischievous. Maybe a little bit mischievous, but not too mischievous. So it's quite difficult being quite the chaotic neutral in front of your neutral good to lawful good significant other. I don't know. I mean, what type of connection would that be? Like, I don't know, like French fry and ice cream from Chicken Nugget. Nevertheless, I think that the connection between the Mistletoe and I, that's how it started, and this is how it's continuing. So I told her these words I've said, maybe not all these words, but at least the majority of these words, I told her these words, and she questioned a couple of parts, wondering if I was really telling the truth. And while you could argue that angels have good memory and they could see everything because of having multiple eyes, supernatural abilities, it doesn't automatically mean they're good at knowing everything. For the mistletoe's predicament, they're not really good at recalling memory. It's almost like there's more than one of them, in a sense. Whether it be because of the shape shifting or memory issues or being amnesic, most of this kind of alludes to the possibility of the mistletoe being, I suppose, dissociative in some way. Maybe it could be through some trauma or something, somewhere along the lines. But she definitely seems to be able to stand her ground and deal with things. And I question if they're doing all right, and they say they're fine. And I take it for a grain of salt and give the benefit of the doubt. They're doing well. They thank me, and to the mistletoe, I thank her back for looking out for me. They remind me that won't be alone. I won't be alone, and that I'll be able to have the mistletoe by my side no matter what. Thanks, Nostalgia Homesick. I respond. The both of us begin to hug.